I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Let's see. So one of them is this one here. Black millennials increased African-American home ownership in 2020, but the road ahead is going to be a challenge, experts say. From April 11th, Brianna Grant, not as opposed to Mtume Gant. Good Lord. Amid a global pandemic, Black millennials led a boom in African-American home ownership in 2020, but racial disparities in wealth, education, employment, and home ownership still persist. Home ownership is going to be a challenge for all millennials, but mostly Black millennials, an expert told Insider. During the pandemic that hit Black communities hard, millennial buyers represented the bulk of African-American home purchases in 2020. Black adults between the ages of 26 and 39 sparked a nationwide rise in home ownership rate for African Americans. According to a November report released by the National Association of Realtors, 5% of home buyers during the first 3 quarters of 2020 were Black, compared to 4% in 2019. Despite a 1% increase, U.S. Census data shows Black millennials raised the home ownership rate for African Americans more than 2 percentage points over the same time frame. The home ownership rate for Black Americans grew to 47% the second quarter of 2020 compared to 44%. Okay, so that's wonderful. I just want to skip ahead to what is, again, the relevant point for me, or most relevant point for me. In addition to historically low interest rates, pandemic fatigue, and fewer expenses, experts say the recent surge has also contributed to the buying power millennials have compared to older generations. This new surge or uptick in the home ownership rate is really about buying power of millennials and the consciousness that, hey, in order for me to really have a stake in my community and in my country, I need to own. And I do think that millennials really understand this idea. Okay, so the quick reason, the main reason for me to bring this one up in this case is because, one, buying power as a marketing and advertising concept is applied to all segments of society. In this case, generally speaking, to millennials, but it is only targeted to Black people as a particular mechanism for collective redress of centuries-old imposed inequality. So no one is suggesting in this article that millennials as a group can enhance themselves collectively with their buying power, as is the case when this is discussed specifically to Black people. But it's only a measurement of the ability of millennials who see, as I've talked about elsewhere with the conscious consumer promoted by Nielsen and others, that consciousness somehow means, the way marketers are encouraged to address themselves to a conscious community, or to encourage the way a definition of consciousness or conscious community to mean, that it just means some sort of symbolic overture to symbolism. And in this case, the symbolic overture would be that homeownership is really about having a stake in my country. I need to own if I'm going to have a stake in my country. So when you get to the reports, as I talk about in the book and elsewhere that continue to come out all the time, when you talk about the reports that show for Black people, home ownership collectively does not mean anything, because the value of homes, for instance, depreciates just because of Black ownership, or for instance, something like the 2008 crisis comes and wipes out all of Black wealth, largely connected to home ownership, where a lot of it is not really home ownership. It is the assumption of a mortgage owned by a bank, which is said to be ownership, to count as ownership, which is why when those banks either default themselves, collapse themselves, or force payment among people who can't afford it, the actual state of ownership becomes clear, or is revealed as non-existent, or is not existing. Okay, so that was just one. The other one that I wanted to show very quickly is in many ways even more pernicious, because it's in the story titled "The Broader Stock Market is Not in a Bubble, but These 5 Sectors Are," according to JPMorgan. And I want to just get down to the nuts and bolts for purposes here. Special acquisition companies. I'm sorry, special purpose acquisition companies, SPACs, which are, I'm certainly no expert here, they only are created so that other entities that really own them can perform acts, can engage in commercial activity without it being known who's actually doing it. So you create a special purpose acquisition company. It operates to do all kinds of acquisitions and trades, and that's all it's there to do. And then, the actual ownership is more masked or harder to understand. But what is important here I just think is really important to check out here, because again, my point is, buying power as a marketing concept is applied to any and every segment of the society. It is only when directed at Black Americans is it turned into this hyper weaponized tool claimed to be part of a revolutionary struggle for change, or as a potential. So the boom in special purpose acquisition companies over the past year has been unprecedented, as companies seeking to go public sidestep the traditional IPO process in favor of the quicker and cheaper SPAC process amid the pandemic. In the first quarter of 2021, SPACs raised more money than they did in the entirety of 2020. Some estimates even suggest that the current stable of SPACs have more than $1 trillion in buying power. But the SEC is starting to set its focus on SPACs and the lofty earnings estimates firms are setting when going public. So my point in all of this is that in just one quarter of 1 year, that is, in just the first quarter of 2021, so there will be 3 more quarters, these SPACs have already developed or generated more than $1 trillion in buying power. So in 1 quarter of the year, the buying power of these special purpose acquisition companies already surpasses all of Black America for any year, for any entire year that this would have been claimed or monitored or assessed. That is the buying power of Black America. Any year you do that, just in the first quarter of this year, a handful of special purpose acquisition companies have more buying power than all of Black America combined. And what does that mean? They have the ability to buy goods, services, products owned, produced, distributed by the wealth from which accumulating to the handful of corporations and companies that basically own the entire economy. No one is arguing that a formerly impoverished special purpose acquisition company or a formerly impoverished group of special purpose acquisition companies can now pool this $1 trillion to overturn a previously unequal relationship to the economy. No, it's saying simply it's going to allow them to further enhance their situation, almost to the point that the SEC, which over time has been proven not to be much of a police to all of this, might end up actually looking at their earnings estimates because of what, how much more they're able to do in that. So anyway, that was one other quick look at the myth of buying power Uh, yeah. Um, Let me see. Why isn't this letting me see your comments? Okay, well that sucks. I see SPACs as the real buying power. Maybe black buying power is a way to condition the acceptance of profit making. Well, I mean, simply put, my argument is that buying power, more broadly, is not only to get black people to accept capitalism as a method, but specifically to suppress black political organizations, social movements, and the attempt to assume political power. And if again, I want to keep going back to this point that I'm getting from Yasha Levine, if we think of this in the context of propaganda or psychological warfare, the only purpose or the primary purpose that our entire media environment exists in the first place, to suppress counterinsurgency, then this is part of that the potential counterinsurgency represented in Black America must be suppressed by encouraging a walking away from Black radical organization, grassroots political organization, movement building, the assumption of political power, and into the mythologies of consume your way to freedom, buy your way to freedom, bank your way to freedom, be capitalists your way to freedom. Moreover, Dr. Ball, this is true investment capital. This is not money that people are using to house feed. Thank you very much, Craig. Oh man, this is why I like doing stuff in collectives, because that's a point I had missed and it needs to be made. It's exactly right. Black people are being told your measly income should be repurposed in ways that are fanciful to change the economic relationship. Whereas Craig is pointing out here, well, if I'm Dr. Ball, then you at least Mr. Bardo. That what this article is talking about, and what many articles that make these comparisons are talking about, is actually capital. That is what can be invested to produce income or profit for the investor, whereas we're being told to sell our labor for income that we can use to somehow repurpose our relationship to society. They're actually using capital and able to raise capital that works for them, and at levels that already surpass the buying power or match the buying. Well, surpass it, because this is just one quarter of the year. It's just the first quarter. A handful of SPACs already can outbuy all of Black America. The way I'm saying this, because special purpose acquisition companies are only developed, they're created by banks or hedge funds or whoever, specifically to acquire companies, to invest, to invest capital, for venture capital to be organized and invested. And then I don't know the exact details, but I'm sure that by doing it through an established company designed for that purpose alone, there's probably all kinds of tax breaks. There's all kinds of ways to hide revenue. Certainly there's ways to hide the specific involvement of individual players. And the point I'm getting at is just that these created entities designed to create more wealth for their investors already have more buying power in one quarter than all of Black America will have for the entire year. But as Mr. Bardo pointed out, their buying power is actually legit in that it is venture capital. It's not the claimed aggregate of the income of an entire Black community that must then spend money on food, housing, bills, healthcare, et cetera, and so forth. These folks, these SPACs, they don't need a portion of that $1 trillion buying power to pay for their house, to pay for their food. Their other capital investments are doing all of that. We are doing all of that by working for them. The labor we're producing, the wealth we're producing for them pays for all of that. No, this is just for them to buy more. Special purpose acquisition. Let me get to special purpose acquisition company. It's designed only to specially purchase and acquire others. So I mean, it's Mr. Bardo. Thank you, because that was the piece I had left out that really ties it all together. How jacked up these comparisons are. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like,